Okay, here is part 3 of Mr. Ham and his Turnip Predicament. As you know, for the recap, Mr. Ham was pregnant and he needed some turnips. Well, he didn't need them. He wanted them very badly. So he had his wife get some turnips, but she had to sell the baby that was still in Mr. Ham's belly to get the turnips from the turnip salesman. But then when the turnip salesman came to collect, Mr. Ham didn't want to pay, so he had to find another way to get the turnip salesman to not kill him or whatever was going to happen there. So Mr. Turnip Salesman says that he would like to have a golden potato, magical golden potato, so that he can go into the potato market and do really good with that. So Mr. Ham, he flew all the way to Ireland, which is wet and green. Try that one again. And he found the leprechaun. His trap didn't work, of course, because Mr. Ham is not experienced leprechaun catcher guy. But he found the leprechaun and he made a deal with the leprechaun, and the leprechaun asked Mr. Ham to get him a script so that all the other leprechauns could put on a show, and maybe people wouldn't want to go after their pots of gold for the, that's what people do, greedy pig bastards. So Mr. Ham took a trip all the way to America to find somebody to write the script for the leprechaun so that he could get the magical golden potato and give it back to the turnip salesman so that he wouldn't die and he could keep his baby. So Mr. Ham, he arrives in Los Angeles in the summertime where it is very hot and the sky is like brown all the time because it's yucky down there. That's where they moved hell, for those who don't know. And Mr. Ham, he steps off of the plane and he gets his luggage and he goes out to rent a car, which is funny because Mr. Ham cannot drive a car. And while he's in line waiting for a car, wondering how he is going to find a person that will write script for him, he happens to see somebody that he believes to be very famous. That person is, of course, Morgan Freeman. So Mr. Ham goes up to Morgan Freeman and says, "Hello, Mr. Freeman, my name is Mr. Ham, and I was wondering if you could help me with a small problem." Mr. Morgan Freeman, he says, "Well, sir, what is the problem that you seem to be having?" Mr. Ham, he says, "Well, it's sort of a long story, and I already covered most of it in the prologue, so if you could help me find somebody to write a script for some leprechauns, I'd be very grateful." Mr. Morgan Freeman, he says, "Well, I've lived in Los Angeles for quite some time, and I happen to know several people who could help you write your script." Mr. Ham says, "Oh, this is wonderful. You're saving my life here, Mr. Morgan Freeman. I mean, like, literally, because there's a guy who wants to rip turnips out of me retroactively, and that doesn't sound that great to me, if you know what I'm saying." So Mr. Morgan Freeman offers to give Mr. Ham a ride to a script writing guy, and his name was Terry Burningstoon. No, that's not right. His name wasn't Terry Burningstoon. His name was actually Ben Hecht. And Ben Hecht, at this point, was dead. But Mr. Morgan Freeman is a powerful guy. He played God once, so he could bring, like, anybody back. It's great. So Mr. Hecht was resurrected, in spirit at least. Because the whole body thing, that was going to get really messy, so they just brought his spirit back so that he could dictate the script to Mr. Ham, who would then type it into a computer or something, whatever they got, and then he would have script. Now, if you don't know, Ben Hecht, he rewrote the screenplay to Gone with the Wind. The version that you know now on the movie screen is the one that was written by Ben Hecht and directed by Victor Fleming. It's a classic movie. It's a piece of crap, but still, that doesn't keep it from being classic. So anyway, they locked themselves in the room for 5 days, and Mr. Hecht writes out the screenplay based on the story that Mr. Hem told him about the whole turnip thing, because Mr. Hecht thought that was a great idea, and Morgan Freeman, he hung around because he didn't have much to do, and it seemed like a fun time, and he ordered Chinese food. And then, so, at the end of 5 days, Mr. Hem had his script, and he says, "Gentlemen, how can I ever thank you? And please don't say by giving me the giving you the firstborn child, because I'm already kind of going through something like that, and it's not really a pleasant sort of thing." And Mr. Hecht and Mr. Morgan, they look at each other and they say, "Sir, it was our pleasure to help you in this endeavor. If at any time you happen to find on your person or in your possession a gravy fairy, you could send it our way, because Thanksgiving is just around the bend, and they're having a gravy shortage this year, apparently." So with that, Mr. Hecht gets on plane back to Russia. No, he wasn't going to Russia. He was going to Ireland to drop off the script for the Leprechaun. But as he was going to the plane, he was in the plane station, there was a group of young kids that were joking around, having some fun and eating some burritos. And after they had eaten these burritos, they were playing with fire and lighting their farts on the fire, just to see the colors and the smells and all the stuff that they were doing. And they weren't really showing respect for other people. So as they're sitting there goofing around, Mr. Hem is waiting for his plane with the script in hand, because as soon as he got off the plane, he wanted to hand it right to the Leprechaun and get this whole mess of business over with. One of the farts ignited the script that Mr. Hem was holding, and it went up in huge gout of flame, and the whole thing was destroyed right then and there. And Mr. Hem, he was amazed, he was confused, he was angry, and the young punks, they didn't really give a crap because they're jerks. So Mr. Hem, he went all over Los Angeles. He had to postpone his plane ticket, and he went all over Los Angeles, but he could not find Mr. Morgan Freeman, and he could not find the spirit of Ben Hecht, because he had already been exorcised back down into the netherworld. So he was lost. Well, he wasn't lost. Well, actually, if you've ever been to LA, it's kind of a tricky place. I mean, there's all kinds of weird people walking around, and the topography is not so good. But anyway, Mr. Hem, he had no script, and it turns out that the plane that he was going to get on was taken over by terrorists and blown out of the sky. So the airport people, they shut everything down, so he couldn't leave. So he was stuck in LA with no script, no leads, no nothing, just not in a good way. And he was about to have turnips ripped out of him retroactively, which, as we've all agreed, can be pretty unpleasant. So that is the end of part 3, Mr. Hem and his turnips. I now return you to Haplo, who is ridiculous for insisting that I keep making this crap up. Okay, thank you.